Azusa Isurigi was a beautiful and talented woman admired by everyone at her company. However, her calm and serious personality made her seem distant and unapproachable. Because of that, many coworkers saw her as cold and intimidating, even though she never meant to be. Deep down, Azusa simply didn't know how to express herself or connect with others. But everything began to change when she met Yu, a cheerful new employee who saw past her icy image and saw her as a kind-hearted girl. The story starts with Azusa walking confidently toward her company building. Her posture was perfect and her expression composed, the kind that made people recognize her instantly. Around the office, she was known for her award-winning proposals and her precise, almost flawless work ethic. As she stepped through the lobby, several employees glanced her way with quiet admiration. But the moment she reached the entrance gate, her calm image cracked. She scanned her card and tried to pass through, but the gate didn't move. Looking down, she realized she hadn't scanned her ID at all. It was a business card for plumbing services. A wave of quiet embarrassment washed over her as she hurriedly corrected her mistake. Meanwhile, in the publicity department, her colleague Kusuk was drowning in stress over a growing pile of work. The atmosphere in the room shifted as Azusa entered, heading straight to her desk. Her coworkers greeted her politely, some with genuine respect, others with nervous courtesy. Once the greetings faded, everyone immediately returned to work. No one wanted to look idle in front of her. Soon, Mori approached her with a concern. One of the influencers they had hired for a campaign had suddenly become unavailable. She asked if Azusa had any ideas on how to handle it. Cold and composed, Azusa reminded her that it was her own responsibility to manage the situation. Still, she offered a solution. If that influencer couldn't participate, they could easily find a stand-in, since several other talents were available. Mori thanked her and retreated, slightly intimidated but relieved. Not long after, Azusa walked over to Kaosuk's desk to hand him some corrected documents. She told him to send them to the planning department, then noticed his messy workspace. With a sharp tone, she scolded him and he hurriedly began cleaning, mumbling an apology. A moment later, Azusa was called over by her boss, Iji. As she walked away, two female co-workers whispered about how dependable she was, while Kusuk muttered that she was also terrifying. The girls agreed, though they admitted she could at least try being a bit friendlier. When Azusa reached Eiji's office, he informed her about a new hire who would be joining their department that day, and that she would be in charge of training him. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across her face, but Eiji reassured her that the newcomer was talented and should adapt quickly. He added that having someone as accomplished as Azusa as his mentor would surely benefit the company. Azusa smiled politely at the compliment and accepted the assignment, though inwardly she sighed. She had spent years cultivating her icy image precisely to avoid things like after-work gatherings or mentoring responsibilities. Unfortunately, Eiji seemed completely unaware of her intentions, still believing she got along with everyone. The thought made her even gloomier, though she promised herself to stay professional. Moments later, the new hire arrived. An energetic voice echoed through the department as a young man greeted everyone. Turning around, Azusa saw him, Yu, the new recruit, smiling brightly as he introduced himself to Eiji. When their eyes met, Yu quickly apologized for interrupting, but Eiji introduced them properly, asking Azusa to show him around. Azusa responded with her usual cool tone, hiding the fact that inwardly she was quite flustered. She found his energy and boyish charm unexpectedly disarming. Still, she composed herself and resolved to fulfill her duty as his mentor. She led Yu to the merchandising room, explaining that the company had originally started as a game developer but had since expanded into several industries, from apparel to real estate and more. Because of that, their publicity department was constantly juggling multiple projects at once. Determined to be thorough, Azusa gave Yu a full tour, the desks, the kitchen, the copy machine, the snack area, even the location of the nearest bathroom. Feeling rather proud of her efficiency, she believed she had covered everything important. But as soon as they sat down, Yu hesitantly admitted that he still didn't know what his actual job was for the day. Realizing she had completely forgotten to explain his duties, Azusa quickly recovered and told him that for now, he would accompany her to a client meeting and observe. Before leaving, she decided to teach him a bit of business etiquette, starting with how to exchange business cards. She tried to demonstrate, but when she attempted to open her card holder, it snapped open and spilled its entire contents across the floor. Mortified, she froze. Yu immediately knelt down and helped gather the scattered cards, handing them back politely. Her composure wavered, but she forced herself to thank him curtly and continued with the day. At the meeting, Azusa and Yu greeted their guests professionally. Yu followed her lead perfectly, offering his business card just as she had shown him. Outwardly, Azusa delivered her presentation flawlessly, but inside she was in chaos. She could feel Yu's attentive gaze on her the entire time, and it made her more nervous than she wanted to admit. After the meeting, Yu complimented her poise, unaware of how drained she felt. As lunchtime approached, Azusa debated whether she should invite him out. She began smiling faintly at the thought, but then panic set in. What if inviting him could be seen as inappropriate? What if she seemed too cold if she didn't? Her thoughts spiraled. She even began worrying about what kind of small talk she could manage. Yu, noticing her troubled face, asked if something was wrong. Flustered, Azusa abruptly claimed she had another meeting and told him to eat without her. She hurried off, cheeks burning, and once alone, slumped against a wall, sighing in defeat. Mentoring, she realized, might be harder than she thought. By the end of the day, Yu stopped by her desk to say he was heading home. Azusa gave a short acknowledgement, then mentally scolded herself for sounding cold again. But before leaving, Yu thanked her sincerely for helping him through his first day, admitting he had been nervous. Azusa softened, telling him it was natural for newcomers to make mistakes and reassuring him that he could rely on her. Her words, though few, were genuine. That night, as she walked home through the quiet streets, guilt crept in. She realized she had spent the entire day worrying about her own image instead of focusing on Yu's experience. Determined to do better, she promised herself that tomorrow, she would try to be more open and straightforward. The next morning, Yu was chatting with some coworkers when Azusa arrived. She coldly told them to make way, and everyone immediately stepped aside. Feeling oddly proud of herself for greeting them normally, she sat down, completely unaware that she had just intimidated everyone again. Later that morning, she handed Yu a new assignment, drafting a proposal for a manga studio. She gave him some of her past work as reference and told him to use it as a guide. While Yu worked, Azusa made a private vow. Today would be the day she finally invited him to lunch. When Yu came over to ask her to review his draft, she pointed out several errors and told him to revise them. Before he could start, she added that he should do the revisions after lunch. It was her chance to finally invite him. But when she turned to look for him, she saw him returning to his desk with a cup of instant noodles. Shocked, she scolded him for eating something so unhealthy. Yu sheepishly explained that he was trying to save money. Azusa froze, feeling guilty for snapping at him. She turned away, realizing she had missed her timing again and possibly sounded insensitive on top of it. During her own lunch in a small diner, she felt weighed down by frustration. She thought back to her early days, remembering how her own mentor once brought her to the same restaurant, offering kind words and encouragement. The memory stung, making her wonder if she was failing as a mentor. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was Ritsu, a senior colleague. As she walked back toward the office, they discussed pending tasks and upcoming projects. Before hanging up, Ritsu teasingly advised her to practice small talk and mentioned that the collaboration cafe project might reach out soon. When he learned she had a mentee, he laughed, reminding her to go easy on the rookie. He knew of her reputation for being strict. Azusa argued that she was doing fine, but Ritsu bluntly told her that short replies didn't count as conversation. He also warned that younger employees these days wouldn't hesitate to quit if they felt unsupported. The comment hit her hard. What if you really did leave because of her poor mentoring? That evening, as the office emptied out, Azusa stopped by a bookstore. Despite her earlier resistance, she bought several self-help books about communication and leadership. Back in her apartment, she realized she hadn't bought dinner. Opening her fridge, she found it empty and sighed, then grabbed a cup of noodles, ironically the same food she'd scolded Yu for. She tried to make herself feel better by pairing it with vegetable juice. As she flipped through the first book, one line caught her attention. A good mentor always greets others warmly, with energy and a smile. Remembering her icy greeting that morning, she groaned. Determined to improve, she grabbed a mirror and began practicing. But her forced smile looked so awkward and stiff that she quickly gave up. The next page suggested praising subordinates instead of scolding them. Azusa frowned. She believed in accuracy and improvement, not empty compliments. Was she really cut out for this role? She leaned back, exhausted, and stared at the overcooked cup noodles sitting on the table before digging in anyway. The next morning, disaster struck again. She overslept. Panicking, she rushed through her routine, terrified of being late in front of Yu. Thankfully, she made it just in time, appearing as composed as ever. But as soon as she arrived, she overheard two coworkers whispering. They called her strict and scary, saying the only reason she kept her position was because of her skill, not her people skills. The words pierced deeper than she expected. She dropped her tablet and sticky notes covered in her self-reminders about tips to how to communicate. Yu quickly picked them up and handed them back gently, catching a glimpse of the hurt on her face before she hid it again. She muttered that they should start the day brushing it off. But before she could walk away, Yu turned toward the gossiping coworkers. With a calm smile, he said that he actually felt lucky to be under Azusa's guidance, that he had already seen her kind side. The room fell silent. The two coworkers paled, realizing Azusa had overheard everything. Yu returned to her side, quietly apologizing if he'd overstepped. Azusa turned away, pretending not to care, then whispered a faint thank you. As they walked toward their desks, she awkwardly tried to ask if he wanted to have lunch together, but Yu missed the hint entirely, cheerfully replying that he'd have noodles again, this time with a veggie stick to make it healthy. The next day, everyone gathers in the meeting room as Azusa confidently presents her plan for the company's next big project, a collaboration cafe. One of their popular games, Racing Girls, will be turned into a themed maid cafe event where the characters appear dressed as maids, and the interior will be designed to look just like the game's racing map. It's a bold idea meant to give fans a fully immersive experience. Yu watches quietly from the side, admiring how calm and professional Azusa looks as she explains her plans to the clients. When the meeting ends, the two of them escort their guests out of the building. Their partners seem thrilled, saying the last collaboration brought in tons of new fans and they can't wait to work together again. But once the guests are gone, Azusa's professional tone returns. She tells Yu he'll also be taking part in this cafe project. She instructs him to study her proposal and fill out several documents based on her past work. Then, as she heads back inside, she secretly makes a promise to herself. Today, she will finally invite him to lunch. However, that determination vanishes almost instantly when she tries to scan her ID at the gate and realizes she's used the wrong card. Later in the office, Azusa notices Yu playing Racing Girls on his phone. Curious, she watches for a moment until Yu glances back and asks if she actually plays the game she manages. Azusa gives a quick professional answer, yes she does, because it helps her understand the customers better. What she doesn't admit is that she genuinely loves gaming and has been an avid player since college. Then, shifting back to work mode, she tells Yu to practice more before finalizing his proposal. Taking her advice, Yu starts a race but crashes almost immediately. Azusa can't help sighing, then decides to demonstrate. She takes his phone, relieved that her gaming skills might actually be useful here. Before joining the company, she'd been a hardcore gamer, even working part-time as a game tester. She still prefers gaming over social outings, but when she starts playing, things don't go as planned. The phone controls feel awkward compared to a controller, and before she knows it, she's leaning and swaying with the turns until she suddenly tips over the edge of the couch and falls. Both Yu and Azusa freeze in shock. Mortified, she jumps back up and insists on trying again. Wanting to help, Yu suggests they switch to versus mode for practice, which makes her relax a little. But when they finally race, it's more awkward than impressive. Instead of showing off her skills, Azusa ends up looking completely unreliable. Later, when they return to their desks, she can't shake off the embarrassment. Her colleagues start making lunch plans, and she realizes this could be the perfect moment to finally invite Yu. She glances at him, but he looks so focused on his screen that she hesitates. Maybe now's not the right time, she thinks. Before she can decide, another coworker calls for her help, and she quickly gets up, pushing her thoughts aside. Meanwhile, Yu runs into a problem with his work and turns to ask her a question, only to find her seat empty. He spots her helping someone across the room, but doesn't want to interrupt. Just as he's about to call out, their section head asks for her assistance, and she leaves again. A nearby office mate then invites Yu to lunch, saying he wants to discuss something with him. Hearing that, Azusa feels a pang of regret. She missed her chance again. She scolds herself internally, but keeps typing, trying to focus. When she overhears Yu politely decline, saying he brought his own lunch, she secretly feels relieved. But that relief fades quickly when she sees what he's eating, just a cup of instant noodles. Concerned, she frowns and Yu explains with a sheepish smile that he's on a budget this month but will eat better next time. Swallowing her hesitation, Azusa abruptly declares that she's treating him to lunch. When he tries to refuse, she turns back sharply and says it's her responsibility as his mentor to make sure he stays healthy. Having no room to argue, Yu finally agrees. At the restaurant, Azusa can't help smiling proudly. She's finally done it. She's invited him to lunch. While waiting for their food, she remembers her own mentor, who taught her how to act properly as a subordinate. Lost in thought, she doesn't even notice Yu quietly placing paper towels and a glass of water in front of her. Small gestures she had planned to teach him herself. When the food arrives, she's startled to see Yu's order, just a salad. She immediately scolds him and cuts a generous portion of her steak, dropping it onto his plate before he can protest. The lunch doesn't start off perfectly, but when Yu takes a bite, his face brightens. He thanks her, admitting it's his first proper meal in a while. Curious, she asks why he's been saving money, then instantly regrets it for being too personal. After a short pause, Yu admits he bought an expensive model kit and decided to save money by skipping good meals. To his surprise, Azusa doesn't lecture him. Instead, she smiles and says it's fine to indulge in things you love, just not at the cost of your health. Yu nods gratefully, and Azusa, feeling oddly reflective, silently vows to stop pulling all-nighters to play new games herself. To lighten the mood, she suggests they play Racing Girls again later for practice. That night, she does exactly that, playing until she finally earns first place using only mobile controls. Her stomach growls and she realizes she hasn't eaten yet. Checking the fridge, she finds only 2 eggs and instant curry noodles. As she slurps her makeshift dinner, she chuckles softly. So much for healthy eating advice. The next morning, Azusa walks into the office more tired than usual, dark circles under her eyes but a small smile on her face. She's proud of herself. Now she can finally guide you properly through the game. She notices him sitting beside her, looking troubled, and remembers how lost she'd been as a new employee. Deciding to be supportive, she sternly tells him to always ask her questions right away if he has any. Yu thanks her but assures her he's fine. The response catches her off guard. She was actually looking forward to helping him today. Throughout the morning, she keeps glancing at him, waiting for him to ask something, but he never does. She even pretends to get water and walk past his desk, but he stays quiet. Azusa starts worrying that maybe she's too intimidating. Determined to fix that, she decides the best way to become more approachable is to invite him to lunch again. But before she can, she overhears him chatting with their coworkers. They're planning to eat together, and Yu even suggests inviting her, only for the others to laugh it off, saying she never joins anyone and always eats alone. Yu looks surprised but goes along with them. Hearing that, Azusa quickly hides around the corner as they leave, embarrassed and hurt. Once the elevator doors close, she sighs and decides to spend lunch alone in a nearby park. Sitting under a tree with her modest meal, she reflects on how quickly Yu has been improving. A small part of her worries, if he keeps growing this fast, maybe he won't need her guidance anymore. And she realizes she hasn't exactly shown him her best side lately either. Before she can dwell on it, her phone rings. It's a call from a business partner. Instantly, her professional tone returns, calm and composed. Coincidentally, Yu and his coworkers pass by on their way back from lunch. He spots her sitting alone, still working diligently even on her break. Watching her for a moment, he feels quietly impressed before his coworkers call him back. By the end of the day, Yu is still at his desk, polishing his proposal. Azusa tries to offer help, but he says it's almost done. At the exit, she scans her ID to leave, then hesitates. She feels bad for leaving while he's still working, so she goes back to the office. When she peeks inside, she sees him focused at his desk and suddenly feels shy. Trying to sneak in unnoticed, she's immediately caught. Flustered, she blurts out that she just forgot to finish something and sits down, pretending to work. Time passes, and eventually she reminds him that it's late and the last train will leave soon. But Yu insists on staying a little longer, thanking her for worrying. Then, almost shyly, he admits that her proposal inspired him, not just the writing, but her dedication. He wants to create something she'll be proud of. Azusa is touched to the point of tears. When he notices, he panics and offers her tissues. She quickly wipes her eyes and tells him that while it's good to work hard, he shouldn't push himself too much. She adds softly that he's doing really well, even better than she did when she was new. Yu thanks her for her kindness and for the lunch she treated him to, saying he knows she usually prefers eating alone. Surprised, Azusa blurts out that she actually wanted to eat with him, that it wasn't a burden at all. Realizing what she just confessed, she turns bright red and hides her embarrassment behind a serious tone, telling him to hurry and finish. When he finally wraps up, she books them a taxi home. But while waiting, Yu dozes off on the couch. Smiling, Azusa gently drapes her coat over him, and Yu ties her scarf around his neck to keep him warm. When he wakes up, confused by how bundled he is, she just chuckles softly, content for once that she managed to stay by his side till the very end of the day. That marks the end of today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach a current goal of 10K subscribers.